In Chapter 3, we're learning about how to create functions when we're programming. And what functions do is they allow you to take a large problem and we're going to break it down into little segments. And you'll read in the chapter that there are quite a few different reasons for doing this, so I'm not going to talk about that now. But I do want to show you how you can look at a problem and break it down into these modules or functions and what that might look like if you're going to implement it then in Raptor. So we're going to take a look at, in the spotlight, passing an argument to a function, and you'll see this on page 100 in your text. So the problem that we're working on is that we have a friend, Michael, who runs a catering company. And some of the ingredients that his recipes require are measured in cups, but when he goes to the grocery store to buy the ingredients, they're sold only by fluid ounce. So he's asked you to write a simple program that converts cups to fluid ounces. So what we want to do is jump right into writing the program, right? No, absolutely not. What we want to do is think through how we're going to solve this problem first. You need to do your planning before you start writing your code. If you jump in and start just trying to write your code, you're going to run into problems because you haven't really figured out how to do it yet. So you'll see on page 100 that someone has already written an algorithm. And the algorithm is just something that you might write out on paper, just your thoughts, to go through the different steps for how to solve this. So step 1 is display an introductory screen that explains what the program does. So that's a good idea. You know, this is going to pop up on the screen and start asking the user for information. It would be nice if we told them, you know, what this is all about before we just jump into doing what the program needs to do. So step 1, display the introductory screen. Step 2, we're going to need the number of cups. Remember, one of the other things that I've told you that you need to be doing is thinking about what your inputs are, what your outputs are, what the processing is that has to go on in between. So here in writing the algorithm, we've determined that we need to get the number of cups, so that's going to be an input. Then we have our processing coming in step 3. We need to convert the number of cups to fluid ounces. So that's going to be a calculation or a processing. And then here comes our output. We're going to display the result. Now, if we were truly creating modules that each have a single purpose, step 3 would be split out into two different things. We would convert the number of cups to fluid ounces, and then we would have something separate that would display the result. And you'll see that when we get into Raptor and the way we're going to set things up there. But we do have some limitations with the Python programming language and how it works with passing things into functions. So I'll talk about that in a moment, but just be aware that this is not really a good structure that we're looking at, but we're making compromises because of the programming language that we're using. So keep looking down the page and you'll see that we have a hierarchy chart. So this is how we're going to now take what we've defined in the algorithm and break it down into functions. We're always going to have a main function, and main, all that main should really do is call other functions. You really don't want to be doing anything else in main, like getting input or doing any processing or doing output. Now again, we're going to make some compromises when we're writing this in Python, but just know that the way that you really should build your programs is to have main just do calls to other functions. And that's what we're going to try to do when we're using Raptor. Okay. So below main, you'll see that we're going to call an intro function, and we're also going to call a cups to ounces function. So intro is going to display our introductory message. That's going to be step 2. And then cups to ounces is going to do what we have in step 3, convert the number of cups to fluid ounces and display the result. So again, we said it's doing two things, really should only be doing one thing, but we need to make compromises with the Python code. And now that we've written our algorithm and we have our hierarchy chart, now we have some idea what we're doing when we get into Python and start writing our code. I do want to point out to you that the code that you see here on the screen, this is just the sample that came along with the text. This does not meet the standards that I've set for you that we're going to follow whenever we're doing assignments. So you're not seeing as many comments up here at the top. You're not seeing the local variables defined. Those are things that you do need to do for your assignments, but just be aware that those have not been included here. So if we take a look at this, In our hierarchy chart, remember we said that we had a main function, and you do always have to have a main function. That's our starting point. So here we've defined a main function. So def main functions always have parentheses, and when you do your definition, you have a colon at the end. Then it's important that you're indenting your code. So here we have that we're going to display the intro screen, and you'll see this is very well commented, which is very good. So here we're going to call intro. So intro, when we get to this point where we're calling it, remember the control is going to pass to that function. So we're going to come down here to where the intro function is defined, and you'll see this is just a series of print statements. So we're going to print out some information on the console. Then control is going to come back up to main, and we're going to prompt the user to enter cups needed. Now this is one of those places where I said we've made some concessions. Usually in a main function you shouldn't have anything like input going on, but we're doing it here because of how Python works. So we're going to ask the user to input the number of cups. We're going to bring that in as an integer and store it in cups needed. So now that we have this stored in cups needed, we can pass that to the cups to ounces function. So here we're going to take cups needed. That's going to be the argument that we are passing to cups to ounces. So now control passes down to our cups to ounces function. And in cups to ounces, I want you to notice this. Here's cups to ounces, so that's what we're calling. But notice up here our argument is cups needed. But yet when we get down here into cups to ounces, see how we used cups? This is our parameter. The arguments and the parameters match up based on position. So because we only have one argument and one parameter, whatever we put in here within the parentheses, that's what's going to get passed. It doesn't matter what it's called. It's all based on position. So even though we have this called cups needed as our argument, and our parameter down here in the function definition is cups, whatever the number is that we've entered in here for cups needed, that's what's going to get passed down here to cups. So in cups to ounces, we get the number of cups that have been entered. We're going to convert that into ounces by taking cups, multiplying it by the 8 ounces. That gives us the number of ounces, and we're going to print it out. Now the reason that we're doing this is because once we've done our conversion down here, we can't get this number of ounces back up to main. We don't have a way to do that right now. In Chapter 6, we'll learn how we can write functions that are going to return values. But because we can't do that, that's why we're just taking the ounces that we've calculated and we're going ahead and printing it out here. So this function serves two purposes. That's not normally what we would want to do. You want to have functions defined so they each have a distinct purpose. But in this case, we are combining the two because of not being able to pass things back to main from the function. Within Python, when you're using arguments, these are only going to be one way. So when we find up here what the cups needed is, and we're going to pass that down into cups to ounces, we can't get that back at all. If we were to need to make changes to it, we can't make changes and get that back up into main. Most other programming languages do have that capability. It's called passing a variable or passing an argument by reference. So when you go by reference, any changes that you make within a function, those changes come back to main. You can think of it like, let's say you're in a class and your teacher has handouts for you. Now the teacher has a main copy of that, the original. They take the original and they make copies and they hand out the copies to the students. So you've got your copy, and while the instructor is talking, you're going to make notes on it and maybe you fold it up and you do different things to it. Does what you do to your copy affect the original that the instructor has? No, not at all. Well, that is exactly how things work here. So whatever the original is, that's what's in main, and it's not going to change at all. Whatever gets passed down into a function in Python, you can do whatever you want to it here, but you can't get that back into main. It's not going to change that. So if we said cups equals cups times 2, so we're actually doubling the value of cups, that doesn't really affect anything. Cups is what it is. It's not going to be able to be sent back up to main. Um, when you're talking about passing something by reference, that would be like if your instructor had the handout and instead of making copies, they just gave you their original. And once they gave you the original, you could maybe make some notes on it and give it back to the instructor. Now the instructor has the original with your notes on it. So that would be passing by reference, and that's something that we cannot do with Python. Okay, now that we understand the example that's in the text and how this was solved using Python, I'd like to take it a little bit further, and what we're going to do is develop a new hierarchy chart and break things down a little bit further to the way this would really be approached, the better solution, so that we can have functions that are going to have a single purpose. And then we're going to look at how we can implement that using Raptor and being able to get arguments back and forth from the different functions. So we're going to start by going into Word, and I want to create a better hierarchy chart here, one that really breaks things down much better. So I'm going to do that by using Insert, and we are going to use SmartArt to create a hierarchy chart. And I'm just going to do a basic hierarchy chart here, and I'm going to change the colors just so it's easier for you to see on the screen. And let's make this a little bit wider here so things are bigger and easier. And we don't need this second level. We're only going to do 2 levels. So I'm just going to click on the edge of this and delete the level that's in between. Now, when you're creating a hierarchy chart, you can do it in Word if you like. You can, write it out on a piece of paper. You can use any tool that's going to work for you. I'm doing it this way just because it's an easy tool to use and show you on the screen. So we're going to start out, our first level is always going to be main. So we start out with our main function, and I still want to do an intro, so I'm going to call this show intro. And we also need to get the number of cups from the user. So I'm going to have something called get cups. We need to do our processing, so we're going to convert to ounces. And then I'm going to split out and have this separately do the display of our results. So I'm going to have to add another shape down here. So I'm just doing add shape and add a shape after. And we're going to add something over here called display ounces. And now you'll notice so far I didn't fill anything within the parentheses. I just wanted to go through first of all and think through how I'm going to divide this up. Now I'd like to go through and figure out what I need to be passing back and forth between these different functions. So our main function is going to call show intro. Do I need to pass anything to show intro? Does show intro need to pass anything back to main? No, show intro is just going to display some text for me. Okay, once I've shown my intro, my next step is that I need to find out the number of cups that are going to be converted. So with get cups, do I need to pass anything back to main? Do I need to pass anything from main into get cups? Well, what I'm going to do is any of these variables that I'm going to have to use throughout within different functions, I'm going to define them in main. And then I'm going to pass them down to whatever the function is where I'm going to work with that variable. And then I have two-way communication, so I can get things back from a function into main when I'm using Raptor. So what I'm really going to do is define cups up here in main, and I'm going to pass it down into get cups, and then in get cups I'm going to set that value and pass it back up into main. So I'm going to need a variable called cups. Okay, convert to ounces. I'm going to take cups, let the user set that value within get cups, pass it back up to main. Then from main, when I want to go to convert ounces, I'm going to have to take cups and pass it down here to convert to ounces. And then within convert to ounces, I'm going to set a variable called ounces, and then I'm going to pass that back up into main. So I have two different things in convert to ounces. I have cups and ounces. Then the last thing I want to do is display my output. Well, I'm going to want to display ounces. But it can also be helpful when you do your output to start with what was the original information that was entered, and then say, you know, what your result is. So I'm going to actually display both the cups and how that's converted into ounces. So I'm going to pass both of those back into display ounces. So we're going to start with a main function. Main is going to call show intro. Show intro just displays some text. Control is going to come back up to main. From main, I'll then call get cups. I'm going to pass an empty cups variable down to it. And then get cups, I'm going to ask the user to enter a value. They enter the value, and I'm going to send that back up to main. Then from main, the next thing I need to do is do my conversion. So I'm going to call convert to ounces. I'm going to pass cups down to it, which is now going to have whatever value the user entered. I'm also going to pass an empty ounces variable, and then that's going to be set down here in convert to ounces whenever I do my calculation. That's going to get set back up here to main. Then from main, I'm going to have both cups and ounces. Both of those have the information in them that I need now. All I need is to do my output, so I'm going to pass both of those down here to display ounces. And within display ounces, I pass the cups, pass ounces, I can do my output, and then I'm done. Control returns up to main, and we finish. Hopefully you can see how doing all of this planning up front is going to make it very easy when we go to create our program in Raptor. And that's where we're headed now. So let's go over to Raptor. Okay, so here I am in Raptor. I've started it up, and I'm going to start here. You know, I have my start and my end. Before I go anyplace, when you do functions within Raptor, you do need to come in here to mode and make sure you switch this to intermediate. If you don't switch it to intermediate, you're not going to be able to create your different functions. Now, one of the things I like to do is before I start adding any symbols, go ahead and put my comments in. That's again helping me to think through what it is I need to be doing. So I'm going to right click on start, and I'm going to add a comment. And in my comment, I'm going to follow the structure that we're using whenever we're doing assignments. So I'm going to put in my name, and then I'm going to say that this is program 3-7, and I'm doing this in the fall of 2013. And then I need to say what this program is going to do. What is the purpose of this particular program? So this program requests an amount measured in cups. And I'm going to press enter here just so that I don't have my comments going way out across to the right. I'm going to try to keep them fairly narrow. So this program requests an amount measured in cups. Converts it to ounces and displays the result. Next thing I want to do here is I want to think about what are the different variables that I'm going to need to use. And I want to think through what data type I want for those and document that here. Now, in some of the programming languages that you'll use, you will actually have to do declaration statements at the beginning of a function. Here we're not required to do that, but I do want to have it documented, and then I'll show you how you can add shapes to your Raptor flowchart that are going to show what would be like initializing a variable. So we're going to use a cups variable, and it's going to be an integer. And this is the number. And you know what? Why don't we make this float instead? As I'm thinking about this, we might have like 2.5 cups. So let's go ahead and make it float. So this is float is the number of cups to be converted. And we're also going to do ounces, and I'm going to make this float. So the number of ounces in the given number. I'm not typing very well today, sorry. So the number of ounces in the given number of cups. And done. Okay, and it wants me to go ahead and save this, so I'm going to save this as program 3-7. Okay, so here are my comments. My name, what this is, program 3-7. Yours might be, assignment for chapter 3, whatever. Fall 2013. Be sure that you describe what the purpose of this is. And this is going to help you keep in mind what you should be doing as you're writing each function. And then defining what the variables are is also going to help you when you know that ahead of time. Okay, now what I want to do is create my cups variable. So I am going to add an assignment symbol. And I'm double clicking on it. And this is cups. And cups is float, so I'm going to assign 0.0 to that. And then do another assignment, and this is for ounces, and we'll do the same thing, 0.0. Now the next thing I need to do, if I'm looking back here, I'm going to call show intro. So how do I call a function? Well, I'm going to add a call symbol, but I can't call a function until I've actually created it. And before I do that, I'm just going to take my symbol here for my comment and move it over a little bit so it's not overlapping my different symbols within my flowchart. So I'm going to come up here and right-click on the tab that says Main. By right-clicking, I can add a subchart or a procedure. We're not using subcharts, we're going to use procedures. So we want to add a procedure, and this procedure is show intro. And then this is where we get to decide about what parameters we're passing in. We don't have any parameters for this, so we're going to just click OK. And now we're on a different tab. You'll see our main is still over here. Now we're on show intro. So we're going to create our show intro function. So again, I'm going to right click and add my comment before I do anything else because I want to remember what this is supposed to do. So I'm going to display an introductory message. Okay, so there's my comment. Now I'm going to output. So I need an output symbol, and I'm going to click and put this in here. And then I double click, and I'm just going to type in my text. But remember, this is a string, so I'm going to have to put double quotes around it. Okay, so the text I want to output is this program converts measurements entered in cups to fluid ounces, and I need my ending double quote. Now you'll see that this says end current line. I'm splitting this into two so that I get a little bit better appearance to my output, and that's something that you need to think about. Is this going to have a professional appearance? So I'm going to click on done and add another output symbol and add the rest of my text here. So I'm also going to say, for your reference, the formula is, and the formula is going to be 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. And again, I need my double quotes to end this. So anytime that you're outputting a literal string, you need to put your double quotes around it. That says to Raptor or to any programming language that you use, whatever's in here, I just want you to take it and use this exact thing that I have within the double quotes. So done. And that's all we need to do for our show intro function. But when we go back to main, we haven't called the show intro function yet. So we need to add that. We're going to add a call symbol, and we add that right here, double click and show intro. And you'll see down here, it's always going to show me any functions that I have defined, and it will show me what the parameters are. So I know if I need to put anything in up here, and there is nothing at all to pass to show intro, so just the open and close parentheses, and done, and we're ready to move on to our next function. Okay, the next function, if we want to look back at our hierarchy chart, is going to be get cups. Now with get cups, we're going to have defined our cups variable up here in main. We're going to pass it down into get cups, have the user enter a value, and send it back up to main. So that's where we're headed next. So we're going to double click on one of the tabs up here. Then we're going to add another procedure. This procedure is going to be called get cups. And this time we do have a parameter, and our parameter is cups. We're going to send that from main down to here, and then we need to pass it back. So we're going to need to set this as both input and output. We're sending it into get cups. We're going to change the value, and then we're going to send it back. And this is what I was telling you we can't do within Python, but we can do it in Raptor. And because we can do it here, it allows us to create a better structure for our program. So get cups is the procedure name, our parameter is cups, that's what goes inside the parentheses, and we're setting it for both input and output. And that would be equivalent to passing something by reference in another programming language. So we click OK. Now again, let's go ahead and we'll put our comments in. And comments for this one, we're going to ask the user to enter the number of cups. And just be sure when you're putting your comments in that it's something that is descriptive and it's going to help you remember what you're doing here. And it also helps anyone who's coming back later on. A lot of programming has to do with just doing maintenance, coming back and making changes to update programs. And even if it's you that's coming back to it, if you're coming back a year or two or even months later, you may not remember exactly what you had in mind when you created this. So by adding comments, we're documenting things. So here, what we need to do is get input. So we're going to add an input symbol, and we click over here to add it. And now we need to create a prompt. So what is our prompt going to be? We want to enter the number of cups. And I'm going to add a colon just to, oh, and I see I didn't spell number right. Sorry about the typing here today. Enter the number of cups. That's my prompt, and then I need to say where I want to put it, and I'm going to store it in the cups variable. So I have to enter my prompt, put in where I want to store it, and click done. And here you'll see my prompt and then my variable that I'm going to store it in. And that's all I need to do for this one. But remember, I need to go back to main, and I need to put in my call to the function. So again, I'm going to do a call, add that down here, and what I'm calling is get cups. And you'll see when I type in get cups, Raptor is going to remind me down here how get cups is structured, what parameters it specified. And it shows us that cups is in and out. Now we don't need to specify the in and out when we're putting in the call up here. When we put in the argument, all we put in is cups. And you'll hear I'm using those two terms together here. When I'm working on a call, when I'm calling something, this is called an argument that we're passing. In the definition of a function, this is called a parameter. So you define parameters for a function. When you call the function, you're sending it an argument. Okay, done. So we have get cups taken care of. Now we need to call convert to ounces. But before we do that, we have to define it. So we're going to add another procedure, and this one is going to be convert to ounces. And convert to ounces, if we go back here and look at how we decided to set this up, convert to ounces, we're going to use both cups and ounces. Those are our parameters. So let's come back here, and we need to set this up so we're passing cups and ounces. Now let's think about the in and out. Cups we already got when we used our get cups function. That's going to come back up here to main, and now we need to pass it to convert to ounces. So that's going to be input. Are we going to make any changes to cups? Do we need to send it back to main? No. So we can set cups as being just input. Now let's think about ounces. Ounces, we're going to define it up here as a local variable in main. We're going to pass it into convert to ounces. We're going to do a calculation and we're going to change the value of ounces. So we need to also send that back up to main. So not only do we send the empty variable from main down to convert to ounces, but we need to take that value that we've calculated down here and store it in ounces and get that back to main. So we're going to define ounces as being input and output. I hope that's all making sense to you. So what we want to do here is we are going to do a calculation, and actually I've clicked a little too quickly here, so I'm going to just click undo and take that back out. I actually need to change this to an assignment. We use an assignment statement anytime we're doing a calculation. And what we're going to do is set a variable. We're going to set ounces. And what are we going to set that to? Now, if you were doing this in Python, this is what would go on the left-hand side of the equal sign. This is what would go on the right. So what we want to set this to is cups times 8, because there are 8 ounces in a cup. And click Done. So here's our calculation. And what I forgot, you see I did it back here on Get Cups and Show Intro. I have my, my comments. But if you look here on Convert to Ounces, I didn't do my comments. So let me go back and do that before I forget about it. So this is converts the value in cups to ounces. And done. Okay, now same process. We're going to go back to main. We're going to add our call. And in our call, we're going to call and you'll notice as I'm typing this, something's going wrong here. It looks like what happened was when I typed in the name, I got my typing a little out of whack here, and I have COVN. So before I put in my call, I'm going to have to go back to convert what's supposed to be convert to ounces. So I'm clicking on the tab to go back. If I double click on Start, that lets me get back to my create procedure, and I can fix this here. So CONVERT. So as you're working on things, you may find that you have little errors here and there that you have to fix, or once you start running it, you might run into errors. You can always go back and make changes. So now I can go back to main, and let's see if I can do this. So now when I start typing it in, it is matching up, convert to ounces, and I'm going to need to pass cups and ounces. So those are the arguments that I'm going to pass. Click Done. So we are almost finished here. If I look back at my hierarchy chart, we did main, show intro, get cups, convert to ounces, and now I'm going to do display ounces. And I hope you are seeing how easy this is because I've done my planning. It's much easier to do my program since I know where I'm headed. So I come back here, right click, add another procedure. This one is display ounces, UNCES, and I need both cups and ounces. And now this one's pretty easy. I'm not doing anything in display ounces except just displaying things. So there's no processing, there's nothing to send back to main at all. So both of these I'm just sending in as input. So click OK. What do I want to do here? I'm going to document that with a comment. And what I want to do in this last one is display the number of cups entered. And I'm pressing enter just so this doesn't get real long. And the equivalent number of ounces. So that's my comment. And now I need to do what my comment says. So I'm going to do an output symbol and add this, double click. And now this gets a little bit more complicated because I'm taking a string literal and I'm combining it with variables. So my string is, I'm going to say you entered. And then notice that I put a space at the end here before my double quote. I'm going to add this literal. I'm going to add on to that. And I'm doing that with the little plus symbol. This is what's called my concatenation symbol. It sticks things together. So you entered And then cups is a variable. So let's say the person entered 3. This would now say you entered 3, and I'm going to add to that the word cups. But now the way I have this, notice that I didn't put a space at the beginning. By not having a space, it would take the number 3 or whatever the user entered and put the C right up next to it. So I'm going to put a space in here. So I have you entered, space, and then my double quote. To that, I'm going to add the actual number of cups that was entered, and then I want to put the word cups at the end. So that's the first thing I output. You entered this number of cups, and that's a good thing to do just so we remind the person this is what you entered. This is where we're starting. Now I want to add another output that's going to output the ounces. So here I'm going to similarly put in this converts to, so this converts to is going to be printed first. Oh, and I made the same error here. converts. This converts to, have the space before the double quote so that I get some spacing before whatever the number of ounces is that's output. It outputs the number of ounces that we've calculated and then adds on to that the word ounces. So done. And that should get us to the end of what we needed to create. So I'm going to hit save just so I get all of these things saved that I've created. And we're going to go back to main just to see what I've got to start here. So we're going to start working through this. We're going to set cups to 0, ounces to 0. So those are my variables that I'm using. I'm going to call show intro. Show intro is going to display those messages. Get cups, this is going to pass in this empty cups variable. The user is going to enter the number of cups. It's going to come back up to main. Then I'll take that same cups variable, pass that into convert to ounces along with the empty ounces variable. Ounces is going to be calculated and sent back to main. And then the last thing we need to do here is one more call. And this call is going to be to my very last function, which was display ounces. And we need to pass to that both cups and ounces. And one last save. Now as we run through this, you can just press this button and this execute to completion is just going to start running through. You can use this little slider to determine how fast you're going through. What I'm going to do is step through this one step at a time so that we can see exactly what's going on. So when I click, I'm going to go to start, click again. Now I'm going to set up my cups variable. And if you watch over here on the left, you're going to see as each of these different variables is used. So I set up my cups variable, set that to 0. Now moving on, we're going to set the ounces to 0. Here we're calling show intro. And this is going to output text. So here this program converts measurements entered in cups to fluid ounces. Next step, for your reference, the formula is 1 cup equals 8 fluid ounces. Now we're at the end symbol for show intro. So when I go to the next step, we're going to go back to main. So click again, we're going to go to get cups. So here we are, control is passing to get cups. Now you'll notice we're passing what was in cups in main. So here we see main, here we see get cups. So we have cups in main and we also have cups in get cups. And at this point they're equivalent. So we're starting out, we have cups is coming both in and out. We're going to enter the number of cups. We're going to ask the user to do that. So here's our little pop-up that's coming up, enter the number of cups. How about if we do 4 cups? Click OK. Now in get cups, the value of cups has changed to 4. In main, the value of cups is still 0. So this is where it becomes important to know whether you're passing things back or not, if it's in or out. If I had had this set just to in, when I would get back to main, cups would still be set to 0. Because I have cups set as in and out, when I finish this function, cups is going to get passed back. So I'm going to go on to the next step. And now look, here we are back in main and cups has the value of 4. We're going to next call convert to ounces. So we're over in convert to ounces, and here we have cups is in and out, ounces, I'm sorry, cups is in, ounces is going to be in and out. So cups, when we're in convert to ounces, is 4. Ounces is right now 0, but we're getting ready to do our calculation. So here we go. Ounces get set to 32. But now again, notice ounces back in main is still set to 0 because ounces here is set to in and out. When we do the next step, we go back to main, and now ounces is 32. So this passing is very, very important when you're going back and forth between functions. Okay. Last thing, we want to go to our display ounces. So we're going to go to our next step. Here we're just passing cups and ounces in. So you'll see within display ounces, we now have our cups is 4, ounces is 32, and we're just going to do our output. So here comes our output over on our master console over here to the right. So you entered 4 cups, and this converts to 32 ounces. And look how I messed something up a little bit here, where I have the 32 ounces. See how that O is right up next to the 32? So in order to fix this, I can go back into here after I finish and make that correction. So always be sure that you're testing, because you may or may not have things working once you create all of your flowchart or your code if you're doing Python. So let's finish this up. We'll see that display ounces is 4 and 32, main is 4 and 32 for our values for cups and ounces. We come back to main. We're at the end symbol for main. One more step, and we're done. So the run is complete, and it tells us how many symbols were evaluated. So it looks like everything's working great, except I need to make a little fix here to my output. So I can go back to display ounces, double click on my last symbol here, and I just want to come down here and put a space in. Click done, click save. And now if this were my assignment, it would be all ready to go ahead and submit. I hope through looking at this you have a better understanding of how passing things back and forth into functions works and how modularization can be done. Also, the planning is very, very important to what you do. As you're working on any of your assignments, please feel free to get in touch with me at any time. Best time to get in touch with me is when you're doing your planning, so that you're making sure that you have that good start, that you know what you're going to be doing when you get to doing the actual Python or the Raptor part of the assignment. But please feel free to get in touch with me anytime.